Alrighty, well, a very, very happy Tuesday, and welcome to another episode of the TNC Sports Talk. My name is Justin. Today is January 13th of 2026, and we are officially wrapped up of the NFL wildcard weekend. And let's just begin there, and let's just dive right into those sports conversations as the Texans and Steelers played last night, and it was a complete shutdown. Credit the Texans as they picked up a victory 30-6, giving the Texans their first playoff road franchise win in history. So, we saw some mild marker historical things over this wild card weekend. And it was, I think, crazy to be able to witness. I mean, the Bills winning their first road game in the postseason in nearly 33 years. We also saw this game here where the Texans picked up their first road playoff victory of their franchise history. And, I will say that despite last night's and Sunday night's football game, where the scores were a little bit more separated than the rest of the wild card weekend matchups, because all the other ones were kind of refrained down to about between 3 to 7 points, no more than a touchdown. And these ones seemed a little bit more separated, but they didn't come until the end of the game. Patriots and the Chargers, that came with a fourth quarter touchdown. The Texans didn't start scoring until the second half. It was a close game there, and they slowly started pulling away. I got a chance to watch majority of the game and kind of fell to sleep towards the end of the game, but they were starting to creep away with the victory by the second half. So my point is that this is these games are very close, and if they're going to be separated by a clear win, it was going to be taking place towards the end of the game, which I have found, which has kept you entertained and invested throughout majority of the game. Houston went for a total of 408 yards, while Pittsburgh only mustered up 175. And I guess are you surprised? Aaron Rodgers went 17 for 33, threw 146 yards with one interception. CJ Stroud went 21 for 32 with 250 yards, one touchdown, and one interception. Woody Marks carried 19 times for 112 yards and scored a touchdown. And Christian Kirk had 8 receptions with 144 yards and a touchdown. When I look at this matchup, what we predict is what we saw. I was on this list of people who are rooting for the Steelers, and maybe my mindset is towards Mike Tomlin, Aaron Rodgers, this team that the fan base was calling for change in the middle of the year, but they, when they were slacking and they found a way to win the division. And this game, I was maybe hoping that the Steelers playoffs kind of stayed alive, at least for one more week. But, history kind of repeats itself, as this is now the seventh, postseason loss in the wild card. I was looking at this. They lost to the Texans 28-6. This is the second time in a row that they've lost to the Texans without putting up more than 6 points. They lost to the Ravens 28-14, lost to the Bills 31-17. And, now we are on this, run they had back in 2020. They lost to the Browns in 17. They lost to the Jaguars, and they lost to the Chiefs. I mean, we're officially in the offseason for the Steelers, and now the question, can be asked and be discussed. What does the future hold for Pittsburgh? What does the future hold for Pittsburgh with Mike Tomlin? If there are, I want to emphasize something. I Don't get me wrong. 22 years in a row where you walk away with a winning record, 500 or better record, is impressive. Through the changes from, if you think about it, it's 2025, this past season, that was since 2005, the Steelers have had a 500 or better record to finish off their season. And that is impressive. Don't get me wrong. Mike Tomlin, I think, has done something very few can do. I think with the adaptation and the changes that we see in the NFL over the last 20 years, that is impressive to hold. He's had to do it with and without Ben Roethlisberger. But that ceiling right now has been cut short for the least the last decade. And, when we look back at this, yes, this franchise have had is notorious, is successful, they'll go down in history, but every year we don't look about who makes it to the playoffs. We worry about who wins the Super Bowl. And the Pittsburgh Steelers are one of the few teams that are so far away from that conversation despite winning a division and making it to the playoffs. I think it's crazy. So let's have that conversation. What does the future hold for the Pittsburgh Steelers? And let's pile it into what we've already seen in a controversial offseason with head coaching and coaching staff. If there's a time, what scares me the most about the Steelers and their future, with or without Mike Tomlin, I don't see a centerpiece that they can formulate this team around. And if this Steelers team wants to maintain their status as a winning team, as a team that is competitive and can pose as a threat to the AFC North and to the AFC at all, then either they're going to have to get lucky and find a new quarterback in the draft or a trade, or they may be taking a few steps back in rebuilding and regrowing the Steelers nation. It scares me because, we watched the Steelers attempt to do it in the past with guys like Mason Rudolph, with guys like Kenny Pickett. I remember when the Steelers brought in Kenny Pickett, the idea was that he was going to be the next star quarterback of the organization. Didn't work out. And then this past year, you threw in Aaron Rodgers. He's at the end of his career. He's looking just to make a comeback and see some sort of success. We really don't know what the future is, but if you have a mindset of its own, Aaron Rodgers probably is looking towards retirement here this offseason or next year. He doesn't seem like a player or, a quarterback that's going to be a 3 to 5 year investment. He's up there in age, and we've seen it this year. We'll get into that here in a moment. But the question we're asking is, what does the future hold for the Steelers? And I mean, I'm not in Pittsburgh. I'm not listening to what the Steelers have to say, but I don't see a future at the moment. I feel like the Steelers are going to be going through a kind of this quiet, hiding rebuild until they can, establish themselves again. And if this is the opportunity, I feel that if you're looking for change, this would be the way to go. Let's do it. Let's pull off the Band-Aid. Let's start fresh. Let's not hide behind the consecutive winning seasons anymore. And let's face reality. And the reality is that the Steelers cannot win a playoff game over the last 7 times they've been to the postseason. And they need to find a way to get over that hump because a Super Bowl team is going to be a team that can win a playoff game. Now, let's look at Aaron Rodgers. What does Aaron Rodgers' future looks like? I don't see it with the Pittsburgh Steelers anymore, and I'm uncertain. Look, I've said this throughout the season, and I'm a guy with a little bit of heart. Okay, I've seen what Mike Tomlin has done. I've grown to respect it and appreciate it. I've seen what Aaron Rodgers has done throughout his career. I've grown to respect it and appreciate it. Both men, in my opinion, are Hall of Fame bound. No questions asked. First ballot Hall of Fame, in my opinion. But I wanted them to get the opportunity to win a division, to go back to the postseason. And at least if you lose in the postseason, you could say, I won a division. That if whatever the future holds, whatever the next coaching position is for Mike Tomlin, whatever the next team Aaron Rodgers decides to play for is up to him. But if they said at the end of this year that my coaching days are retired, my playing days are done, I'm going to hang it up, I'm going to reap the reward and go out and triumph. This is the way to do it. You've lost. You made it to the playoffs. You lost, and it's time to move on. It is that story that I think a lot of people will go on to say that you leave the industry better than you left it. And Mike Tomlin and Aaron Rodgers has left the Pittsburgh Steelers better than where they left it. Now, it is the direction that they move forward in where based on their choices and selections in the upcoming draft and free agency and re-signings, that's going to determine their future success. But they've given everything they got. Now, let's say Aaron Rodgers wants to play. I think his days as a starting quarterback for any organization for an entire season is done with. I don't think he has the arm strength to get the ball down the field. I don't think he has the agility and the stamina to be able to move outside the pocket and scramble if necessary. He's becoming more of a one-dimensional quarterback, with all due respect, because he's had a colorful career, but he's becoming a one-dimensional quarterback, and it's easy for teams to defend against a one-dimensional player. He's a guy who has to stay in the pocket. He's going to rely on his offensive line to protect. He needs short and key passes. And when you're limited to being able to toss that ball down the field, the defense is going to be able to pick up, and that gives them more men in a shorter range to defend whatever Aaron Rodgers is out there. Now, like you said, he doesn't have to be done, but in my opinion, I think he should hang it up. I think he should say, listen, this is it, and I'm going to retire. But that's on him. If he chooses to stay, then I would recommend and highly suggest that he stays because as a backup quarterback, because he has a lot of wisdom. He has a lot of talent, expertise, tenor. And I believe, call me old school for saying this, but I believe that that brings a key value as a backup quarterback, just like Joe Flacco. He may not be able to give you a full season at perfect health. I don't think that's possible ever again. If he has to step in once in a while, I think that's logical. But a backup quarterback that could take a young rookie quarterback under his rings for the next 2 to 3 years to polish, just like he did with Jordan Love, is something that I would be suitable for. I'm going to go back to Brett Favre. This is a player who wanted to go, and he did it. He went to go into a different team after he left the Packers to prove to everyone that, it wasn't the Packers, it was him and his success. At some point in his career, things became a little bit more clear. Look, when are you ready to retire? You lost a step. Okay, it's time to retire and let someone else come in and give it up. Aaron Rodgers is anything that he does beyond this point, if he decides to play, it's going to be, in my opinion, tarnishing the image that I have left on him. So, my hindsight suggestion and prediction that Aaron Rodgers will retire and that he will go off into the sunset victorious and triumph over a division win against a team that is already calling for changes. Mike Tomlin. I just don't know what would be next for him. And this is a head coach that is set in his ways. And he's kind of this old school mentality coach that this new league over the last 15, 20 years has adjusted to and changed. It's not the same coach. It's just like Pete Carroll. I'm not saying he's not capable of coaching a winning team. I'm not saying he's not capable of continue playing, but I feel like his ceiling is the limit. I think this is a good opportunity for Pittsburgh to move on, and I think this is a good opportunity for Aaron Rodgers to reflect on his career and make the right decision, as well as Mike Tomlin and wherever he coaches. Now, I've heard out there, what about Mike Tomlin with Penn State? That would be a good decision, no? At least you would be able to keep it a try, keep it, within house and within the community. And there will be an excitement for a guy like, a Mike Tomlin joining college football. But I don't know if that's the direction you want to go. It's always tough, right? To make it to the professional league and then have to settle for college football. Very few coaches, in my opinion, can make it in the NFL and go down and have success in the NCAA football. Jim Harbaugh is probably the only guy that I know that's capable of doing both. And I appreciate guys like Nick Saban who just, I don't know what he brings to the NFL as a head coach and if he would be successful or not. But the way he ran his organization in Alabama, you just appreciate that he keeps his history right there in the roots. So, the Texans, and, this is a team that is going to advance to the divisional round. I'm looking forward to the advancement. We are officially in the division this weekend, so our time is to reset the clock and our notice. They will be taking on the Patriots on the road on Sunday at 3 p.m. That'll be available on ABC. At 4:30 on Saturday, the number 6 Bills will take on the number 1 Broncos. That will be on CBS. Then at 8 o'clock on Saturday night on Fox, the 49ers and the Seahawks, followed by the the Texans and the Patriots, and then Sunday night at 6:30, the Rams and the Bears. So we have our divisional round set, and we'll be making our transition into the divisional round. All right. I wanted to just share some news about the Cincinnati Bengals. Mike Brown came out indicating that Mike Brown revealed that there will be a $260 million plan to renovate Paycor Stadium. And this was said here about this renovation that was breaking news that's been talked about here recently. Cincinnati will never be the same. This isn't just about football. It's about transforming the riverfront into a global destination. We're doing this for the fans, and we're doing it big. That came from a quote from Cincinnati and the Bengals. And I'm just reflecting on this renovation, which I think is great. I've come to appreciate downtown Cincinnati over the years. I've come to appreciate Great American Ballpark and Paycor Stadium. No questions asked that they are it's a tourist attraction. If you're a sports fan, you come out here not only to enjoy the history but the scenic view, the atmosphere. I love how Paycor Stadium is kind of connected with Great American Ballpark, and then you have Heritage Bank that just got the new scoreboard inside last year. um, we're always looking to renovate the area and improve the area into today's modern times. You have um that little cross in between the walk between Great American and Paycor that has been a big kind of a big number one spot for games and throughout the weeks. And this is only to elevate it even more. You got to enjoy the riverfront of the Ohio River, just in over, something that you can see from certain parts of the stands. Great American Ballpark has swing porches just out there inside the stadium that looks over the river into Kentucky, and it's a marvelous place. Now, with the renovations though, needs to come with some success. And I look back and thinking that, with how the Bengals have performed the last couple years, missing the playoffs, we need to really have a bounce back year. Because what's going to happen to the ticket prices for both Great American Ballpark and Paycor Stadium when renovations happen, not only to the area surrounding the stadiums, but to the stadiums itself? The ticket prices are going to go up. The demand's going to go up. The ticket prices are going to go up. It's going to be a little bit more complicated to get tickets, a little bit more costly to get tickets. And no one's going to want to go to the games unless you're winning. So I feel like this does put pressure on GMs like Duke Tobin and, Nick Kroll to make sure that they put their best foot forward as far as they can to give us a winning team in Cincinnati, so that you keep thriving and encouraging players and fans to want to come out and support the team. But that's where I think that this renovation will come in handy. I've been to Paycor Stadium a few times. I love it. It is very crowded. I feel like, for me, if you're asking me where I can make changes at, both Great American Ballpark and Paycor Stadium is going to have to be concourses. It is so packed, shoulder to shoulder, that it doesn't become friendly. Like, and for me, it's going out to these games. I prefer grab me my food, grab me my drinks, grab me my scorecard. Let's do the walking before. I'm still a kid by nature. I'm trying to get over it because I'm trying to create an experience for my kids. But for the longest time, I've always brought a scorecard. It got me tuned into the game. I kept score. Um, I I wouldn't leave my seat until the game's over. Right? I would watch the game from, I wanted to go out there at watch everyone, the grounds crew set up this, field and the practices and the stretching. I didn't want to miss a single action. The moment I got into the stadium, my eyes and my attention was focused on the field and what was being done. That happened in San Diego. That happened at Great American Ballpark. But there are other things around the stadium that is attractive that, young kids want to go view. And, I have to make that sacrifice and say, all right, let's go view those things I'm going to take my eye off the game a little bit. It's a little bit, for me, it's disappointing. But walking through the concourse, especially when you walk into Great American Ballpark, whether you walk into Paycor, are shoulder to shoulder. And I'm not a fan of it. I want some more space. Um, the other thing, which San Diego did this, and I want to feel, I want to be able to not to miss a single action any part of inside and outside the stadium. So one thing I will give credit to Petco Park, which I love them and love Petco Park, not just for the scenic view, but there's not a part of the stadium, whether you're in the bathroom, whether you're on the concourse, whether you're out this is at Petco Park, whether you're out at Gallagher Square, whether you're even at the gas lamp ready to get on the trolley that take you back and forth. Everywhere inside and out within a perimeter, you're able to either to watch or listen to the Padres during the game. The pregame, the postgame, you caught all of it. You didn't miss a single action when you went down to Petco Park. I feel like when I leave the field view, I miss out on the Reds baseball. When I'm standing in line and you're out there on the, you know, home side dugout, you're out there on the, left field side, side, and the sun's blazing down, you're on the concourse and you're trying to get food or whatnot. You're getting obstruction glare to see the screens, but you can't hear anything. And you're trying to pay attention to line so that you don't miss your turn and not get distracted, but you're trying to also watch what the Reds are doing. So I don't know. Maybe maybe someone will listen to this. I will love being able, if Cincinnati and Paycor and for the Reds and the Bengals can give you more of a moment where no matter whether you're headed out to the parking lot, whether it's out there on the far side where Heritage Bank is at, or it's one of the levels down below that stretches all the way far. From there, I just wish that they would give you more content and availabilities to listen to the game, to watch the game, so you don't miss the action. If you're in the area, it's always there. Yeah, when you, I don't know what that um that I don't know where that pavilion area is, what it's called. It has slipped my mind, but they have that big screen that watches the ball games, and it's like literally right across the street. And you watch the games, you can watch football games and whatnot there too, but you get to be a part of that. They got you involved. I just wish that was everywhere. I don't know. That is my only take. But I guess let's see what Paycor Stadium has to do with the renovations and how they improve it, and maybe it's more attractive. But at the same time, I think that the Bengals is going to lead to higher tickets and whatnot. So, alrighty, let's continue our football conversation here. I have, out of the 6 teams who lost back on over the weekend and wildcard weekend, I have takeaways that are either positive or takeaways that are negative. So it has to be one. It can't be both. So let's start off with the Carolina Panthers. And this is actually going to be a positive thing. I think, listen here, they got to tag Bryce Young and bring him back for a 5th year. I know it's taken some time for Carolina and Bryce Young to settle in and kind of figure out. I'm really hyped for what Carolina was able to pull off this year. I'm really motivated and interested to see if they can come back and only improve from their performances this season. But that starts with Bryce Young. You got to allow some room for growth. And I do think Bryce Young is this future quarterback for the Panthers. I say invest. You have something strong. And I think that you stick with it, you continue to grow, you add on to what you have, and you see what happens next year. Because the NFC South, I mean, unless the Falcons can turn things around very quickly, or even the, Buccaneers, maybe this year was a fluke and they're dominant. I think the Panthers have a good chance at contending next year in the playoffs. So, Panthers, positive thing. They got Bryce Young, young quarterback, developing quarterback. You continue working with him and you bring him into that. You kind of keep everything around him, evolving around him. The Green Bay Packers coming up next. This is kind of a negative takeaway. I think they have some decisions in head coach Matt LaFleur. I know he has an upcoming year left with the organization. I know that there's conversations about possibly extending his contract, but when you look, and I get it, Packers are a winning team, but just like the Steelers, they are stuck at a hump. They made it to the postseason and they've lost 6 out of 7 times. And how do you get on and improve from there? When you see when you get an 18-point lead and that gets taken up by the Chicago Bears, I ask myself, well, what changes need to be made? Because that is an embarrassing moment in the playoffs. And you can't just push that aside and say, all right, we're just going to move forward with or without. It's nothing. It is something. You lost. And how do you direct it? Because there was no offense ability after that. You completely shut down and you gave up a lead. Along that line between they were, leading 18 points till now losing 18, losing the game. Whether it's a head coach, offense, defensive coordinator, something shifted and it impacted the Packers deeply. So I think it starts at Matt LaFleur. I think it's a good opportunity for the Packers to get a new start, maybe use him as a trade value. I don't know what that would look like, but could you receive something, maybe a couple of draft picks out of it, and kind of move forward and get this fresh start? The Jaguars. One thing about the AFC South is that it's up for grabs. It's always has, and it's always been. They are a developing team. Don't let it despite you, don't let it kind of dethrive you from seeing the Texans advance. They kind of faced an easy Steelers team that didn't have much to offer in the game. Okay, they kind of been lingering off of hope and prayers. But the Jaguars, I've been waiting for Trevor Lawrence and this Jaguars team to continue to get back to the AFC South division titles and establish themselves as dominant. They need to get themselves figured out because when Daniel Jones comes back as the Colts, it's going to be a competitive division. But I think their offense needs to continue to build for next season. The Eagles. Boy, I got to tell you, the Eagles here has dropped for me. A.J. Brown is a negative. I think that for the best decision and the best outcome for this Eagles team, A.J. Brown needs to be traded. And that's something we could talk about on upcoming weeks. What teams could he be traded to? But when you get to the point where your head coach and one of your top receivers is clashing too often, and it's reflecting the performances on the field, off the field is reflecting, You could see it on the sideline. That's just a negative impact. And that's a negative impact that you don't want on your team. You want everyone to be synced together, everyone on the same page, and everyone having the same morals as, hey, we need to win this football game. We're not playing a individual sport. We're being a team player. We gotta do this as a team because we win as a team. And there's just too much going on that I see, regardless of what comments are being said. I just see too much negativity coming from Mike AJ Brown on the Eagles, and I think that lurks for attention. It throws in a red flag for me, and I think that he, in this case, the Eagles should pass on from Brown, get him in a trade, let him. Hey, what team do you want to go to? Let's see if we can work out a deal. The Los Angeles Chargers, boy, they did fire their offensive coordinator that I just saw on CBS, Greg Roman. I think there's a lot more that needs to be done with that because their offensive line did not exist. Let me restate that. I think yes, they need to improve their offensive line, and that's my main point. There was a lot during the game where I saw the Patriots defense just bull rush. The Chargers offensive line is weak. It's something that needs to be fixed. And, this is the first start. You fire Greg Roman. It's a start, but you need to strengthen this offensive line team. The way that I saw every snap in the fourth quarter, someone got to Justin Herbert was just hard to watch, hard to endure. And so offensive line protection, and I'll tell you this. We're going to relate this back to the Bengals. Who can improve their offensive line this offseason? The Chargers or the Bengals? That's something I'm going to be looking out for, and we're going to have that discussion as the draft comes up in April and as we get ready for next season. And last but not least, I have the Pittsburgh Steelers, and it's going to be Mike Tomlin. As we've talked about this, Mike Tomlin has taken this team, as despite this great consecutive win record that the Steelers possess, their ceiling is the first round of the playoffs. They need to get over that hump. Mike Tomlin, I believe, is one of those old school coaches that are set in his ways, and that's good and all because he's shown to everyone that it still works. But you already see it, hear it from the fans, and I think the elimination last night truly indicates that it is probably time to make some decisions. Whether or not it's Mike Tomlin deciding to retire, I'm uncertain, but I would like it. I would hope that it's a clean and clear, respective departure, and the Steelers just hopefully moves on after their loss last night. So, what are which team lost this past weekend that had a positive or negative um, outcome from it? Can you gain anything away from the losses? But man, this wild card weekend was something else. I'll tell you that. All right, let's move on. Before we do move on, let's talk about Enlighten Studios for their upcoming promotion, Grassroots. I invite you to check out their social media pages. Follow them on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, YouTube, and just stay up to date on their new upcoming events and venues. Talking about their upcoming events and venues, Enlighten Roots is a performing arts company, uh, prioritizes in the theater production. They have 8 theater productions in 2026. And coming up in February, we will all witness a theater production written and directed by Terry Chappell II called Grassroots. A powerful message embarking a 1950s experience of what it was like for Black families who lived in neighborhoods that had to deal with change and the truth uh, about everything that took place in the time frame. This production is a great set of cast, and I encourage you to get your tickets today. Tickets are available by visiting tickettailor.com. A link will be in the description of this video below, and I encourage you to get your tickets before they sell out because we anticipate a large number of crowds for these performances is be taking place at the Cincinnati Artville Theater in Cincinnati, Ohio, from February 27th through March 8th. And while you're there, while we are all following the social media pages, we invite you to check out Enlighten Studios' new podcasting channel. You can find the podcasting channel Light in the City available on Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Castbox, and anywhere you get your podcasting needs. Be sure to follow and don't miss a single episode of a podcast when they get launched. A weekly series podcast every Monday at 5 p.m. is called the Enlighten Express, hosted by me, your truly self, Justin, that provides news events lingering around Enlighten Studios. And in our recent episode yesterday, we talked about uh, an upcoming dates changes, and we also got a chance to hear from a little bit about the cast and their excitement for the grassroots productions. So be sure to follow and like and share to your friends. It would be much appreciated to me and to Enlighten Studios as we continue to grow in 2026. All right. Before we get into WWE, we will recap Monday Night Raw just briefly to here wrap up our show. Something broke through in Major League Baseball earlier today as the St. Louis Cardinals has traded third baseman Nolan Arenado to the Arizona Diamondbacks in exchange for right-handed pitcher Jack Martinez. This doesn't come to a surprise from the Cardinals as they are kind of cutting back, trying to open up some financial budgets and unloading their roster a little bit. This does a lot to the Arizona Diamondbacks as earlier this offseason during the winter meetings, rumors suggest that Ketel Marte would be available on the market, and recent reports came out indicating that despite off-field drama between the Diamondbacks and Marte, that they will not be interested in trading him, at least at the moment. Arenado is added to this roster and to this infield that is already consisted of a shortstop of Geraldo Perdomo, second baseman Ketel Marte, and first baseman Tin Tawa. We are currently in this arbitration moments, and in about a month or so, we will see pitchers and catchers report to spring training, and in about a little month and a half, spring training games begin for a month, and then in April and or at the end of March, the regular season of baseball for 2026 begins. And the Arizona Diamondbacks are trying to add key opponents. They had Eugenio Suarez last year, and they made a compelling run heading into the postseason. But they also deal with a very tough division as the San Diego Padres and the Los Angeles Dodgers look to dominate the NL West at the moment. San Francisco Giants in the same position, trying to find their grounds, but the Dodgers are looking for a three-peat in the World Series. So Arenado, who's 35, I know he's up there in age, but the Diamondbacks are looking to milk every last ounce of Arenado's talent. So, that is the interesting spot for today. I wanted to just bring that up and give you guys that insight. So, Monday Night Raw last night. Well, it wasn't last night. They're out there in across seas, and it actually took place earlier as let me get back to you. This is going to be coming from Bleacher Report as I'm kind of getting some help. So it took place at 2 o'clock on Netflix, came from Germany, and there's a couple keynotes. So one thing we're looking for was AJ Styles versus Gunther. We also had CM Punk make an appearance after winning and retaining his World Heavyweight Championship last week against Braun Breaker. And so I wanted to jump right into the segment between CM Punk. So CM Punk is out here and he's retained his World Heavyweight Champion. Now he's looking for who's next after he beat Braun Breaker. And it's funny because CM Punk thinks that he's done with Braun, but we know Braun's not done with this situation. Punk talked about being on the road to WrestleMania and how everything can happen, or anything can happen. He mentioned Cody Rhodes losing the WWE title as an example, but he said his plans to be the champion forever and is still moving past the vision. Well, looked like the promo was done, but then he was interrupted by Finn Balor, who said that he isn't waiting for the Rumble or the Chamber to get his title shot. Punk said he's been waiting for Finn to take his shot, but apparently Finn's been too busy playing video games and shining Morgan's shoes. And then Punk said he wanted to put the title on the line against Balor tonight, which then the crowd got loud. Balor said he wanted to wait until next week because they'll be in his home country of Ireland. Punk agreed, and it will be confirmed that next Monday night on Raw in Ireland, the World Heavyweight Championship will be on the line as CM Punk will take on Finn Balor. Balor used one of the quotes back into Punk's, basically saying, well, you get a chance to win in your hometown of Chicago, Illinois. Let me win in my hometown. It's a pretty straightforward segment. Nothing to really present. I think that you kind of took shots at Balor for being this. I think the Judgment Day has gotten in the way of Balor and his usage in the WWE as a singles competitor. At first, I thought him joining the Judgment Day was great, but then his time with JD, McDonough and just making appearances wasn't enough. And I think this match is a fan favorite match. Punk and Balor, a lot of similarities in their career and their style of wrestling. And it's going to be interesting, and it's going to be a fun match next week, no doubt about it. But I wonder if the Judgment Day if this is his mark to move outside the Judgment Day. We see what Dominic has already won and what he has as championships. Liv Morgan, is proclaiming trying to gain a title, just like Raquel Rodriguez, Roxanne Perez. The Judgment Day is doing a little bit more progression in becoming or trying to capture championships than what we've seen through the Vision. And so a segment like this, it was a fine segment. I really enjoyed it. Yeah. Well, I guess we'll look forward to that match next week. Perez and Morgan, who became the new number one contenders for the women's tag team titles, they beat the Kabuki Warriors and Bayley and Lyra Valkyria. This came after a confrontation in the opening segments as Rhea Ripley of the show, where Rhea Ripley and Io Sky came out celebrating their tag team titles. Liv Morgan wants those titles for themselves, and this began to escalate with the Kabuki Warriors, and therefore has led to this triple threat tag team match. And Liv Morgan and Roxanne Perez will get their chance next week. Or I don't know if is it next week on Raw? Um, but they will get their chance probably heading into the Rumble, I would presume, to get their chance of becoming new champions. And then we saw Rodriguez after a interview between Michael Cole and Raquel, with Raquel. He was surprised to see her stoop so low as she attacked and injured the champion, Stephanie Vakir, last week. Well, Raquel is tired of waiting around for getting screwed out of a title shot. Fair to say. Stephanie showed up. Security made Rodriguez leave, but then she turned around a few moments later and attacked Valkyr, slammed her injured leg into the concrete before finally leaving. So, new elevation to the women's championship. But then we get to the vision, and I wanted to talk about the vision briefly here, as it's a clear indication that Braun Breaker is not done. Is actually outraged in the outcome. Breaker appears during the match out of nowhere and spears Dragon Lee. Breaker and the Vision continued. So Dragon Lee and Penta won by disqualification as Breaker and the Vision continued their assault despite Pierce trying to stop them. He got in the ring, he got on Breaker's face, and it took everyone in the Vision to hold him back from beating up the general manager. Paul Heyman tried to talk everyone down, but Pierce told him all to get out of the building, and when the show returned, Pierce suspended Breaker indefinitely. Okay. So I want to talk about this. This is important to talk about. I was telling people last week that the Braun Breaker loss put Braun back a few steps from the momentum he was gaining, especially in my opinion. A loss didn't do a lot of good for him. Yesterday's incident and being suspended is something that is quickly putting him back on top and continuing the push that we want to see from Braun Breaker. You're basically telling me that Braun Breaker lost last week. He's so outraged, he's so pissed off that he's going to annihilate anything and anyone who gets in his way. If that means you're going to lay hands on authority and the Adam Pearce, the general manager, then that's what it takes. He was cheated out of a WWE World Heavyweight Championship last week. He does not like it. He demands to be back at the top, and this is how he gets back to the top. I think it adds a little bit more flair to the story when you suspend him indefinitely. So we don't know when he's going to be back, but now in the back of my mind, as weeks come, maybe this is the Royal Rumble, maybe it's Elimination Chamber, maybe it's WrestleMania, but my point is that Braun, in the back of our minds every week, we're going to be invested into knowing when Braun Breaker comes back, because we know hell is to be paid and he is not done with it. It's also going to reflect how the Visions, Bronson Reed, Austin Theory, Logan Paul, how they continue to progress with Paul Heyman. I feel like this continues to build heat for Braun, pushing him aside for a few weeks, allowing the vision and the rest of the members to kind of grow and to build under Paul Heyman. Just focus on them for maybe 2 to 3 weeks, and then let's bring Braun Breaker back in the picture. That is just my honest opinion. Now, Paul Heyman here, and I want to just highlight this note. I know Paul Heyman, he could be this part-time guy. You got to give him credit. He's out here every week. He's really invested into being by these young guys' side to help push them and help them thrive. And you guys got to give him credit where credit's due. So I'm glad that the WWE has found a way for them to elevate and to push Braun Breaker and after his loss moving forward. All right, in the main event, we saw AJ Styles take on Gunther. Gunther, who's been cocky and been arrogant ever since he beat John Cena and made him tap. Last week, AJ Styles confronted Gunther, and they both agreed to a match this week, so they began to clash. Gunther ends up winning after hitting a low blow while the ref's back was turned. Had him, and then he hit the power bomb for the win. This way, this ended was a little confusing since the camera didn't see or didn't show Gunther tap, but we got a better angle after it was over. So we kind of put a little bit on Gunther where he should have lost. Okay, it didn't happen. Gunther took advantage. He ends up winning, and he ends up being at the top of this. He still is up. He walks away, and I think this is all strategy. Gunther broke out of the calf crusher again by slamming Styles' head into the mat several times, but the Phenomenal One locked it in again. Styles thought Gunther tapped and released the hold, but the referee didn't see it. So now we're getting the referee. So this is Gunther cheating himself away from winning the match. He changed, and he used it to his advantage. So now we're getting a little bit of everything from Gunther, which is, I love it. I love the build. You don't know the direction you're going into. This is kind of becoming more of a petty win. This is a win that keeps him bragging and it keeps his arrogance relevant, but it also gives him a win that keeps him on top and keeps his momentum going for next week. I can see this becoming a feud like that. It has a rematch, but I hope we want to. The one thing I will say to this, and this is my last statement of the show because we're restricted on time, is I don't want this to take off of what Gunther and his credibility. Gunther's a great athlete. He doesn't need any assistance to win. He'll win some, he'll lose some, but he's dominant in his well-being. So yes, we're taking this a different approach as he finds ways to win a match, but this should also come away with him, at some point getting back to the type of wrestler he is, because he's an amazing wrestler in the ring and does not need assistance or a cheap way out to lose or to win a match. So that's my saying on that. That is all the time I have for you guys today. I want to thank everyone for tuning in. Please be sure to like, share, subscribe, follow, let someone know, hey, check out this podcast. Let us know in the comments whether you like us or not. Everything is much appreciated, and we will be back tomorrow. Tomorrow's conversation, we will give you our top 5 male wrestlers from the WWE in 2025. Our 5 male top wrestlers of WWE in 2025. We'll talk some sports with you, and we'll start turning our attention heading into the divisional weekend of the NFL. So I'm excited for that to happen. I want to thank everyone, and until tomorrow, have a wonderful rest of your evening. Take care.